Welcome everyone to the DC Buzz, live from the Hive Audio Series. My name is Andrew Raut, and I am the host of the series, and I have with me Jason Strawley. And we are back on the dub stage, the Full Sail dub stage, for part 2 of our sound effects and field recording series. So it's going to be an exciting talk. We're going to be learning a lot about field recording, what it is, why it's important, and we're going to talk with Jason, and he's going to share some of his most excellent adventures around the world, and we'll finish up with how do we get started, gear. So it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, we've got a fun assortment of toys to play with and show off. So hopefully it's inspiring and something that you guys can think about doing on your own someday.
Absolutely. So what do you say we go talk field recording?
Yeah, let's go.
Good. All right. We'll see you shortly. Well, that was an amazing trailer.
Thank you.
So tell us about it.
Yeah, so that particular job was for Pro Sound Effects. They're one of the main sound effects library companies out there. And yeah, they didn't have any specific mandate for us in terms of location, but what they wanted was wind, water, waves. So that was the 3 W's that you might have seen in the trailer name. So, because we had a previous library along that theme and it was pretty successful. So they basically wanted a sequel to that was kind of that, but enhanced. So the first thing we thought was like, where is some of the most extreme weather on the planet? Some of the biggest waves, the highest winds. And it turns out that Iceland actually kind of fits the bill for that. And Iceland has the added benefit of being off of many of the airline flight paths. And it's a largely empty country. There's like about 200,000 people in the entire country, but like more than half of them are centered in one small city right on the coast, and then the entire rest of the country is empty. So it's a great place to record because you can just drive an hour and you will never see another person again unless you really want to. You're not dealing with airplanes ruining your takes, anything like that. And then the weather is just crazy. Insane waves, warning signs everywhere you go that the waves will sweep you into the ocean if you're not careful. And hurricane force winds just out of nowhere. It's not even a storm. It's a blue sky and the wind is blowing 80 miles an hour. Just spontaneous blizzards, stuff like that. So if you're looking to record weather and have it be free of any human distractions, it's probably the best place on earth. So
yeah, we're gonna talk about that regarding how to choose locations for really clean, pristine environments that are not polluted with noise pollution.
Right. You have to go out of your way, as we'll discuss.
Yeah. So how did you decide on Iceland? And when you did that library, for instance, for Pro Sound Effects, did they give you any direction, or was this something you had to do all on your own?
Yeah, this was basically something, myself and my business partner just had to take upon ourselves. Other than the mandate of wind and waves, but bigger, everything else was kind of left to us. Wow. So another reason that we chose Iceland was just like logistically, the country is very friendly to production. They have a countrywide film commission that's very easy to work with. The way they do their permits there is very lax. They're very friendly to drones, which is a big part of our trailer, obviously. So other than just purely sonic reasons, that's why we chose Iceland. Also, the flight's not too bad. Even from here in Orlando, it's about a 7-hour flight. Oh, yeah. So it's not the worst. So yeah, really just all around a great location.
That's excellent. So how would you describe field recording?
Well, field recording is basically just sound effects recording, except you're not in the studio anymore. You're out in the field. But I think to narrow that down a little bit, to me, field recording is you're not trying to record the sound of one specific thing or one specific element of the soundscape. You're trying to record the entire soundscape. You're basically trying to record an authentic location. And that, to me, is probably philosophically, the biggest thing that separates it from normal sound effects recording is that we're not focused on one thing. We're not trying to record the one bird sitting in the tree. We're recording the flock of birds and everything around it. So to me, that kind of sums up field recording.
Yes, we're trying to sonically capture our world outside of our studio.
Right.
That's great. How did you get started? Now, in part one, we talked about sound effects, and that is, pretty straight ahead. If we can't find it in a library, we go record it. But field recording, what inspired you to?
Yeah, so it was really, there are two main reasons. One of them practical, one of them very impractical. The practical reason is I was sick of going through sound effects libraries, editing backgrounds for film, and having to edit the sounds before I could even use them in my timeline. So that is like, I would try to find a recording of birds chirping, and I'd find a recording with birds chirping, but it would also have cars driving and people walking and ambulance sirens and airplanes. And it just got so tedious to have to cut around all that stuff. I was like, where are the sound effects that are clean? If I type in birds, I want just birds and nothing but birds, or just wind, or just whatever it is. So the more and more I looked, the more I realized there was actually a huge hole in the marketplace for these types of recordings. And just to kind of, if we can get a little bit technical here, for audio post for film, like for narrative film workflow, it's super, super important to have layers of audio that just consist of that one thing. So like a picture editor, for example, if they're doing like a temp edit, you know, sound-wise, and the scene is set in Central Park in New York, they can just type in Central Park, and they can have one sound file that has birds and people and cars and, you know, bums fighting and ambulances and all that stuff. And that's Central Park. That's very authentic to that location. It might have actually been recorded there, and that's great. But now imagine you're sitting in a mix with a director, and the director's like, hey, I like the soundscape here, but the bums fighting in the background are just super distracting. Can we lose those? And you have to be like, well, no, because they're embedded in the same audio file as all the other layers that you do like. Right. So to get rid of that, we'd have to get rid of the entire sound, and then we'd have to go find new sounds in the library to replace it. So that's just not really practical. So when we're mixing a film, we'll have many different layers of sound playing at the same time that'll be just, you know, usually we have a layer called air, and it's just air and wind. And then we'll have one called birds and bugs, and it's just those elements. And then one that's just cars and traffic, and then one that's just people, and then one that's just machinery, and so on and so on. So when the director says, hey, lose that bird chirp, it's driving me crazy, we can just go to that one layer and turn it off and move forward very quickly. So that is the technical reason why we need clean recordings. And like I said, I just kind of realized that there wasn't much of that on the market. So that was probably the biggest driver for getting started with field recording, was setting out to record clean audio. The impractical reason is I love to travel more than anything. And I just thought to myself, what can I do that with my skill set that would pay for my travel? And it turns out field recording was able to do just that. So, you know, for me, if I go on a vacation, I still bring all my recording equipment because that's what I do for fun. It's my job and it's what I do as my hobby. So it was hugely beneficial to just be like, hey, let me combine both things, and then I get to take a luxurious, you know, exotic vacation and have the work pay for it.
That's right. That's great. So we're here in Florida, and when you got started, you know, you were out just shadowing with a colleague of ours recording, you know, either, where was it, down in the, not the Everglades.
Yeah, we'd go out to like the Econ Trail. I don't know if anyone's in the Orlando area, but you know, kind of like out in East Orange County, kind of by the St. Johns River, different wildlife tracks out there.
But even out there, we're pretty close to town.
Right.
So what was your first location outside of Florida that you did all on your own? Where you researched it, you planned all the logistics of, you know, flights, hotels, all of that, and then you had to find the places that would give you those pure recordings. What was that?
That was Washington State. And the reason we chose Washington State is there's a place on the coast called Olympic National Park. And within that, there's a forest called the Hoh Rainforest. And within that, there is a spot called 1 square inch of silence. And it's been measured to be the most quiet location in the entire contiguous United States. Quietest in terms of man-made noise pollution. So there's an organization that promotes this location and protects the soundscape from unwanted noise. You know, they petition to keep like fighter jets away from it and stuff like that. So I found out about this spot and was like, oh, well, that's what I got to go record there. So that was the first big expedition. You know, and now of course, you know, you go to record that destination, you fly into Seattle, so recorded the city of Seattle different spots on the way. You're driving 3 hours out to the national park, so might as well record on your way. But that was really the big motivation, was to record that particular location. It turned out to be very difficult to access. It was so early, and we had such little experience that I was dressed like I am right now, literally jeans, sneakers, and a t-shirt. And the morning, when we got up and got in the car in the morning, it was like 74 degrees and sunny. And by the time we started our hike, it was like 36 and raining. And then by the time we were into our hike, it was like freezing rain and mud, and just completely soaked all the way through, and shivering, and barely even made it to the intended location. So valuable lesson learned about, it's not just about the equipment, it's about like equipping yourself to be able to be in those conditions.
Yeah, and you've gone to some extreme locations. Mm-hmm. So what about out of the country? Where have you traveled out of the country?
Let's see, for recording, specifically Canada, which is a little bit easier, on Vancouver Island. So that was on another trip out to Washington, but did a recording expedition up the coast of Oregon, Washington, and Vancouver Island. So that was the first international experience. Since then, we've recorded in Iceland, of course, mm-hmm. Germany, France, Australia, and Indonesia. And I'm probably leaving something out, but those are the countries I'm thinking of off the top of my head.
Yeah, and I get so much, I have a lot of fun talking to you about these adventures, because I feel like I'm living vicariously, through these adventures. What were some of the things you remember from the European expedition?
Something that's very interesting about Europe is their cities are designed very differently from ours. Like, a lot of the cities are kind of built in this way that the center of the city is not downtown. The center of the city is the most ancient part of the city, and it's usually closed to traffic. And then as you go out from the center, it becomes more and more modern, and oftentimes like what we would consider to be a downtown with like high rises and stuff is like way out on the outskirts. So one great thing about Europe, and France in particular, is that you have these ancient cities, and you go into the middle to record, and you don't get any pollution from traffic. Car traffic is one of our biggest problems, and you really don't hear it because the streets are closed off to everything but pedestrians. Another great thing that I love about France is they think, or at least this is my take, they think that music played in public, like off a speaker, is kind of tacky. If there's going to be music in public, it's usually a live performer. So that can be a major issue when you're trying to record in a city, is like there's music and you've got like copyright issues. Right. Like you can't do anything with that sound now if there's music in it. So that's something very interesting about Europe, is just, the way their cities are built is just much more conducive to getting really great crowds. Beautiful ancient cathedrals with bell towers, and snuck into Notre Dame and recorded guerrilla style in there. Oh, yeah. But yeah, some of these locations are just, beautiful and iconic. I mean, how many movies have had Notre Dame in it? So you need right. the sound from that. So. Right.
Tell us about Indonesia.
Yeah, it's first of all, it's
you went there for a special gig, and this was one that you didn't plan. You didn't do the location scouting.
Right. Yeah, I was not the producer on this particular job. So this was for a project. I'm allowed to talk about it now because it's going live. I think like in the next month or two. It's a project called Data Land. That's a big gallery exhibit in LA that is AI art, I guess, but it's ethical AI, where all the data sets that they use to derive the work is all harvested by the artist. Like the artist basically funds an expedition. And the goal of this project is to go to 16 different rainforests on Earth and record them with immersive audio to feed the AI. But it's not just audio, it's also video and drone pilots and LiDAR scans and photographers and scientists working in different fields, and everybody's gathering this data that's feeding this AI model that's going to build like a very realistic, immersive rainforest experience at this gallery. So that was the job that brought me to Indonesia. However, one thing that we didn't really consider was location scouting. I think that the producers kind of underestimated just how bad noise pollution can be. Especially in a place like Indonesia, it's a very small country. It's a series of islands, and we were on the what's considered the most populous island of Java. And there's almost as many people on Java as there are in the United States, but they're crammed into a tiny, tiny little island. So it is just very, very densely populated. So we get to the location, and it's gorgeous. It's a beautiful rainforest. The people are amazing. It's the most alien place I've ever been in a good way. The problem was the noise pollution was, nearly ruined every single recording because of the population density. If you were to record in Indonesia, I think it would be correct to go to like Sumatra or Borneo or Sulawesi, the other islands where almost nobody lives.
Right.
But yeah, so this one, that particular location was very challenging. I think ultimately we got some good recordings, but it was like by going out in the middle of the night into the jungle, which is scary, I have to admit. But it was the only time we could even have any hope of getting anything clean.
How close was your location to the city? Because when we were talking about Washington in the what was it, the square of silence, of silence, you had to drive what, 3 hours or so to get to that?
Yeah.
How close was the rainforest to the city?
So
in
this
Indonesia?
location was about an hour's drive outside the outskirts of Jakarta, which is now overtaken Tokyo as the most populous city on earth. So about an hour's drive outside of that, in an area that's kind of like the tourist area. Like people from the city on the weekends all come to this area in the mountains and they have mountain cabins, and it's basically like Disneyland of Indonesia. So not far enough outside the city. And then even, we'd go up on the mountain, the volcano where the rainforest was to record, and there's still villages all the way on the side of the volcano and even coming up the side of it to some degree. And one thing I didn't consider, and even though I knew this fact, I didn't realize the impact it would have on our recording. It's a predominantly Muslim country, and there are mosques everywhere. Every other building seems like it's a mosque. And they're all doing the call to prayer on PA systems all simultaneously from every direction. So I actually have some great recordings of not rainforest, but just like immersive call to prayer, as there's like 20 calls happening all at the same time, overlapping each other. So, from a travel perspective or, anthropology perspective, it was really interesting and really cool. It was hard to be mad that I wasn't getting good recordings because everything was just so different from what we're used to here.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it's safe to say you've been all over the world. On your recording bucket list, if you could record anywhere in the world, what would it be? Where would it be?
Well, I have two answers. Again, I have the real answer and the selfish answer. The selfish answer is I desperately want to go to Norway. If I'm being realistic, it's not going to sound too different from Iceland. I just, unless there's something that I don't know about Norway. If you know anything about Norway that sounds unique, let me know. But that's where I would really like to go. I think it would be an amazing trip. On a more practical level, I'm really interested in like Southeast Asia, like Vietnam, maybe Cambodia. because I think that's an area of the world that's underrepresented in sound effects libraries. It can be hard to find stuff from that region. So both, and it would be good to get cities, you know, and you know, like Ho Chi Minh City. We have a former intern that lives in Ho Chi Minh, and she'll send me a picture of like tens of thousands of scooters, all just, you know, en masse. There's no lanes. It's just complete mayhem, and that would be awesome to record. But also, there's really nice, pristine jungle there. There's a good infrastructure of, you know, people who can speak English, you know, to serve as guides and stuff like that. So I think while Norway would be a blast, I think maybe Vietnam would be a more practical and useful, you know, experience. So if you're thinking of doing a field recording expedition, maybe take me up on that tip.
That's awesome. When you're out recording, and you set up, we were talking about listening and learning how to listen. And when we make a recording, we're out there for a long time. So, you know, we were talking about, well, how long is a recording? And we were talking about 4 minutes total, you know, to give you enough recording to cover a scene, but not too much that it would be a gargantuan file size. Right. How long, you know, would you have to set up and record just to extract out, you know, a good 4 minutes? And let me ask you this, how much editing would you have to do? You know, how much of the sound would be on the cutting room floor before you get that 4 minutes?
Yeah, so it's going to vary because, again, I'm very, very strict on if it's not a noise that's supposed to be in that soundscape, it's got to go. So very, very strict. So it depends on how noisy the environment is. I mean, I can legitimately say sometimes I've hit record aiming to get 5 minutes clean and got 5 minutes clean on the first take. That is very, very uncommon. Usually what I do is I hit record and I open up the stopwatch on my phone and I just hit go. And then as soon as I hear something that doesn't work for me, and I should also note when I'm recording, I don't have the headphones on. Like I put the headphones on to check that everything's working and sounds good. And then I put the headphones down and now I listen without that impediment on. And so if I hear something, I'll immediately stop the stopwatch and I won't start it up again until that item's clean. Now, mind you, the recording is still rolling. It's not like I'm stopping the recording. So, you know, if an airplane, especially if it's especially high altitude, it could take 5 to 7 minutes from the time it enters the soundscape until the time that the tail end of it's completely gone. So that's 5 to 7 minutes. I'm just sitting there looking at the stopwatch waiting for it to end. So I would say on average, to get a 4 minute recording, I usually roll for about an hour.
Wow.
So, you know, in any given recording, probably 56 plus minutes has been chopped out because of unwanted noise. And that's a lot.
So what are you doing all the while? You know, I mean, you're listening, but you just have to kind of calmly sit there. You can't move, or we're gonna pick up your movement.
It'll be audible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't even breathe too loud. You really have to almost go into like a meditative state and just remain perfectly still and silent and breathe quietly. And a few magical things happen when you do that. The first is that you really hear the soundscape. Like in a way, when your mind is engaged with other stuff, it's really easy to filter stuff out, tune stuff out, and really just pick on, you know, usually we're picking up on speech. That's the most important thing we need to hear. So that's where your ear is going to go towards and ignore everything else. But when you're in silence, you can really explore the soundscape. And this is an exercise everybody should do. You could do this in your backyard as soon as this class ends. Just go sit somewhere outside and just listen, what is in the near field? What am I hearing that's close to me? You know, is there a cricket in the bush right there? Right. Or the leaves of the bush that I'm sitting next to rustling in the wind? And then what's in the midfield? You know, in your neighborhood, is there a neighbor with a lawnmower? Or are there kids playing and laughing? Or, you know, if it's nighttime, are you hearing the air conditioners of the neighborhood? And then in the far field, what are you hearing that's far away? Maybe you're hearing distant highway traffic.
Right.
Or, a distant airplane, or
a train in the distance.
Yeah, a train, the loneliest sound in the world, the train calling out in the night. So that is oftentimes what I'm doing while I'm sitting there recording. So that's kind of magical, is to really, truly hear stuff. The other thing that happens is wildlife will kind of forget that you're there. I've had an experience where I was sitting on a stump. I'm here on the stump where the camera is right there. That's the microphone. So there's maybe 9 feet between us. An entire herd of deer walked right past my shoulder and went between me and the microphone. One of them bit the wind protection on the microphone and tried to escape with it. Then they realized it wasn't food and kept moving. I mean, I could have reached out and touched a dozen deer if I wanted to. Or another time, this was in Maine, I was standing because the ground was wet. And so I'm just standing perfectly still, and a fox came between my legs from behind and curled up and laid on top of my feet, like a wild fox. And it just slept there for like 20 minutes before my foot was going to sleep, so I gently nudged it off and it got up and ran away. So that's the other really great thing. You're really giving the wildlife time to settle down and get accustomed to your presence, or even forget you're there, and then they go back to their normal behavior and they're making the noises that you're trying to record, which can be tough. Sometimes if you just barge into a landscape and hit record, you're not going to hear anything because all the animals are scared. So that's the other big benefit of just rolling for a long time.
How are we doing on time?
It is 7:32.
Okay. What do you say we talk a little gear?
Yeah, we brought lots of gear. We got a pretty good show and tell here, so we can absolutely.
We get a lot of questions about how to get started doing sound effects recording, field recording. So we brought a lot of gear from very basic, I wouldn't say entry level, but not.
Some of it's really entry level.
It is, but it's not cheap. But it's good quality, all the way up to, the big rigs for recording immersive audio and that sort of thing. So why don't we do it?
Sure.
Let's talk gear. All right. I'm going to move this. So while we were getting ready to show you gear, we saw another really cool trailer. Jason refers to it as his biophony trailer. So what is biophony?
So the sound, natural sound, can be broken into a few different areas. There's geophony, which is like the sound that the earth makes. Okay. So this could be like, the earth rumbling in an earthquake, or a rock slide, or steam vents near a volcano, or even wind and waves would be considered geophony. Or anthrophony would be man-made sounds. So all the stuff that I'm talking about wanting to get away from, for the most part. And then biophony is the sounds that the animals in the landscape make, whether they're insects or birds or mammals or whatever the case may be. So,
cool.
Yeah, those are the three main classifications of sound.
Awesome. All right, so we brought a cornucopia of field recording gear. So why don't we just dig in?
Yeah, let's start with the entry level.
Okay. Well, if I were starting out and was trying to figure out what kind of investment I was going to make in gear, because we don't recommend you just, go for broke and go get, an immersive Atmos microphone and a sound devices recorder. Kind of grow with it. So these hand recorders, and there are a number of versions. This is a Tascam DR40, and this is really cool. I'll show you something cool about this in a moment. Zoom makes a H4n, but they have a number of other ones that are newer models. Sony makes them. Who else makes them?
Yeah, I think the Sony ones are my favorite. If we're talking about recorders that have the microphones built in, I think the Sony PCM series is the best out there. But again, you have Tascams, you have Zooms. There's other manufacturers out there. I think Behringer's making one. Don't buy that one. Yeah, so that's an important distinction here. This is an all-in-one unit.
Right. And what is neat about this particular unit, there are two ways that we can position our microphones. This is for stereo. If you just want to just go out and do just a basic stereo recording, you place your microphones either where the capsules are almost touching. Which camera? Yours? Okay. Or this gives an okay stereo image, but if you want something really dramatic, on this particular unit, you can turn the microphones out. And this is a microphone configuration called Ortif. And for me, this is my preferred,
if I'm going to record stereo, it's going to be Ortif for sure.
Yeah, because it's going to give you a lot more dramatic stereo image, like something that's over on the left side of the stereo field will be on the left side, whereas and so forth on the right side. But when you put the capsules together, it still gives you a stereo image, but it's not as dramatic. Also, and Jason will talk about this, when we're out recording, we need wind protection, okay? Because there's nothing worse than the sound of wind, excuse me, wind blowing across the actual capsule, the diaphragm, okay? So when I push the capsules together, then I can put this really cool wind protection softy, and that we'll still record wind, but it won't be sound that we hear a lot. Mm-hmm. So the hand recorders are a great entry point, and the hand recorders have XLR inputs, so you can add microphones to this. You're not limited to just the ones that come on the hand unit.
Yeah, so that brings me to the next recorder that I want to show. This is the Zoom F3, And this has no built-in microphones. So this is kind of like the next step up in recorder quality, where it's a nice enough recorder that they don't feel compelled to give you a microphone as part of it. It just has 2 XLR microphone inputs, and it's made of metal, really tiny, really rugged. I abused this thing severely, and it's held up to it. So, I think for $340, you can get into something like this that, again, is just the recorder, but it's a pretty nice recorder. What I would pair with this is I have a couple of really nice budget microphones here. There is a company that is very budget friendly, but their microphones sound way better than they have any right to. So I'm gonna do a little plug for them. I think they're in like Slovakia or something. I don't work for them or anything, but the company is called LOM, L-O-M, and they make microphones like these. This is something called the LOM Uko. This is a pretty decently nice condenser mic. They cost $50 each.
Wow.
So you can do stereo, a decent stereo pair of microphones with XLR connectors for $100.
How would you put those?
So, I mean, I guess you could plug it straight into the recorder like that. You wouldn't get a great stereo image though. So yeah, you just run a standard XLR cable to that. Another option, like the next step up from those mics, same company, LOM, makes these mics that are called the USI. USI. This is a stereo pair.
Here, let me hold this.
So 2 microphones, they sell them together, and it's about $160, I think.
Wow.
And this is one of my favorite stereo pairs, really. I mean, because, if you wanted to get a nicer mic than these, you'd probably be looking at spending about $1,000 each. So, $2,000 is a lot to spend on a stereo pair. And yes, those expensive microphones are fantastic. However, I found these at, a fraction of that price to be almost as good. Almost as good. You really have to squint to see the difference in sound quality, or I don't know what the equivalent of ear squinting is, but to hear the difference. Yeah, so this company, they're great. They make them in small runs and they sell out immediately. So you have to get on their email list so you know when they're going to drop the microphones, and then everyone snatches them up because, field recordists everywhere love these things.
How would you use those? Give us an example of how you might, because I heard this term called tree ears. Mm-hmm. Tree ears and what we call a drop rig. So can you explain what that is?
This is a drop rig mic. So a drop rig is something where I will take, and a lot of recordists do this, I'm not the only one doing this for sure. You'll take a recorder and some microphones and set them up somewhere in the wilderness and leave them running for 2-3 days at a time, completely unattended, getting rained on, getting eaten. This very mic, recently an otter ran off with the wind protection, just popped it off in the middle of the night and ran away with it. I found it like 20 feet away with otter tracks all over. So a drop rig, what you're doing is you're rolling for a really long time, trying to get weird one-off events like that. You're trying to get an animal to come up real close to the microphone and make some really interesting sounds. Of course, it's a lot of information to filter through after the fact. It's a lot of time in post of listening, but some of my best wildlife recordings have been on drop rigs. So these microphones are affordable enough that I don't feel too terrible leaving them taped up to a tree for 3 days at a stretch.
So literally, we're putting these on a tree.
Yeah, and the thinking is the way humans hear the world in stereo with our 2 ears is influenced by the fact that audio coming from this side goes in this ear, but audio coming from this side has to go around your head and then hit that ear. So there's a slight, millisecond or so timing difference between one ear and the other, and that's how you decode where a sound is coming from. It's those time of arrival differences. So what we'll do is we'll find a tree that is roughly the same diameter as a human head.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah, so we'll literally walk through the woods and be like, no, too skinny, too fat, too fat. Oh, that one looks like a human head. So we're just, roughly, this big.
Right.
And then you just tape a microphone to either side of it.
That's so cool.
And then you have to camouflage it, so we'll put a bunch of plants around it. We'll put leaves taped to the tree above it as a rain shield, so if it were to rain, it hopefully doesn't land directly on the mic and hits the rain shield. Yeah, so that's drop rig and tree ears. So this is my combo, the Zoom F3 and these Lam Usis, for not too much money. It's something, it's all insured, of course, but if it was to get obliterated in the field, so be it. I call this my stunt recorder.
That's cool.
If I'm sticking a microphone into like lava somewhere, this is the one that I'm using for sure.
Nice. Let's talk about this rig, because we're still talking stereo. Now we're going to talk a little bit about immersive in a moment, coming back to the whole tree thing. This is just a simple, basic stereo rig where these are two, take these off.
These are overhead mics.
Yeah, they're
Drum overheads.
Yeah, and I've used them for years recording classical music. And these are just another iteration of the softy that will go on the capsule like so for wind protection. And this is on a stereo bar, if you will, that if you look at this, this will allow you to change the spacing of the microphones. So when we were talking about the ORDIF configuration for stereo recording, you could see this is about as wide as my head. Okay, and it's a fantastic, just straight ahead stereo recording rig. Now I could turn these microphones, in towards themselves, for another iteration of stereo. But this is really super cool, because if you record in stereo this way, this mic is picking up what would be over on the left side, the right side, and any sound that is between the microphones is picked up by both of the microphones, and it will be recorded and positioned in the center. All right. And then, of course, we carry these very, very lightweight stands with us, because as Jason was talking, he's all over the place and hiking, and we are very cognizant that our gear is.
Yeah, the weight really matters. So these like lighting stands, like collapsible folding lighting stands, are great because they're just hollow aluminum, so they weigh next to nothing, and they can collapse down to fit into a Pelican case, which is super important compared to something like a microphone stand that doesn't really collapse like that.
Right. Now this piece right here, all right, hold on. What's this, Jason?
This is a parabolic dish. So you've probably seen these on the sideline of football games. Usually, it's a bigger dish than that, and it's, somebody's operating it with two hands, and they're just pointing at where the action is happening, and the broadcast might use that. So it's a dish, and what's interesting is you don't point the microphone out from the dish. You point the microphone into the dish. The dish collects audio from a wider area and then funnels it in and focuses it to the capsule of the microphone.
So the sound waves come in and bounce and are reflected into the microphone.
Right. And basically the end result of that is it's like a magnifying glass for audio.
Oh, okay.
Like it's almost like a zoom lens. You can really zoom in and hear things that you wouldn't otherwise.
Right.
So, again, sports applications. I'm recording a UCF basketball game this weekend. and I'll be bringing a parabolic dish to try to get the sneakers squeaking on the floor or the players talking to each other and stuff like that in kind of a zoomed in manner. But in terms of field recording, this is great for wildlife. Especially wildlife that you either don't want to get very close to or can't get close to because it'll run away.
Right.
You get a pretty good range enhancement with something like that. Bird or hobbyists are actually sometimes like sound nuts, and like birders use parabolic dishes extensively to get unique bird calls and stuff. So now we're not talking about the whole soundscape. We're trying to get like a bird in one location, and we're trying to zero in on that.
Yeah.
It's really fun, but it's really hard. Oh, it is one of the hardest things. Like if you are easily frustrated, it is not probably for you. I know that I can get frustrated, but I have fun just being outside. So sometimes I don't. I'll go out to the wetlands and try to record stuff, and just maybe I'll get something, maybe I won't.
Yeah. But getting outside is really important to developing your ears and really learning how to listen. I think we spend way too much time indoors, and we don't even really know what our world sounds like.
Right, yeah, I'm going to pick on my interns. Here in the dub stage, we have interns every month, and a lot of times they just don't know what the world sounds like. So the choices that they make in their edits are really bizarre. Right. I'll say, put in some night crickets, and it'll be like wild, Serengeti, swarm of locusts. It's like, when in your life have you gone out in your backyard and heard a swarm of locusts?
Right.
So it's that lived experience, I think, that's really valuable to editors, anybody working in the film industry. You're going to build off of your influences, but you got to get out there. So strongly advise that if you're not outdoorsy, give it a shot sometime. It's really cool.
Yeah, and instead of filtering out noise, embrace it, listen to it, and learn what your world sounds like. And more importantly, again, if you're going to work in this industry as a filmmaker, and my students have heard me say this many times, we're responsible for creating the world that the story takes place. Mm-hmm. And your understanding of the locations around the world, what they sound like is pivotal to, doing it right. What else do we want to show them?
Well, we can talk about an intermediate recorder.
Okay.
So if you have a little bit more experience and some more money to play with, the next recorder, it's in a sound bag, which is also really important because this is the armor for your recorder. So we have a Sound Devices MixPre 6. So this is a 4-input recorder, and this is probably my favorite recorder in the world. I've put these things through hell and back, and they're basically unbreakable. I think they retail new for like $1,200 or $1,300. Worth every penny. Of course, it's a pretty big jump from one of the other recorders that we've looked at. But this is what I recommend to somebody who's maybe just starting out as a professional. Maybe these recorders on the table here are suitable for students or amateurs or beginners. But when you're ready to upgrade, something like the Sound Devices MixPre 6 would be the way to go.
And you can find those used.
Oh yeah, they're all over the place on the used market.
Yeah.
Just get it from a reputable dealer. There are shops that specialize in production audio and field recording audio, and they'll service the recorders and they'll have a warranty on them. So if you're going to buy something used, don't just buy it off of a Facebook Market or whatever. Get it from a reputable reseller. So a couple of those off the top of my head: True Audio, TREW, is a pro audio dealer that does this kind of thing used, and Gotham Sound. They're based in.
Are they still around?
I'm not sure.
In LA.
Yeah. Are they in?
LA?
Yeah, they're in LA.
Yeah, coffee is
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a MixPre 6. It also has a big brother called the MixPre 10. So this is an 8-input recorder. This is a good bit heavier. This is what our mixer Alan has over here too.
And I have one.
Yeah.
I have the first version. That's the, what, Mark II?
Yeah, this is a Mark II here.
Yeah.
So the only difference between the Mark I and the Mark II, I believe, is really the 32-bit.
32.
Yeah. So this is a 32-bit recorder, which is probably beyond the scope of this class. But email us if you have a question about that.
It just allows you to record a lot louder levels without it distorting.
So this recorder, I think, is great, like for production sound. If you're working on film sets, it's a really nice recorder for stuff like that. In the field, I find that it's a little too heavy for me, because again, the weight adds up. I might be hiking 10 miles, so I don't necessarily want the extra weight unless I truly need it. Now, if I'm field recording and I truly need this thing, if I'm doing like a multi-channel Dolby Atmos recording for a client, now it's necessary. And I know I'm going to be in for some pain.
But you're talking about taking 8 microphones out,
right,
as opposed to your
So I guess that is a good segue into the next part. So somebody, I think, asked the question, what is my favorite piece of gear?
But before we get into that, you used a word called immersive at least 3 or 4 times when we were talking. First off, what is immersive?
So immersive audio is audio that is perceived as being all around you. So whereas stereo audio,
not just in front of you.
you're only hearing, on a plane in front of you, left to right.
Okay.
Now, immersive audio, you're hearing left to right and front to back and up to down.
Right.
So immersive audio, you can think of it as a 360-degree sphere or bubble around the microphone where it's picking up everything. And then you can play these recordings back on surround sound or multi-speaker systems and hear it as intended. So that's immersive audio. So here I have an example of an immersive audio microphone. This is the Sennheiser Ambio, and this is what's called an ambisonic microphone. So again, that's probably a little bit too technical for this class, but if you have questions about immersive audio, shoot us an email. But long story short, you might be able to see there are 4 microphone capsules. I took the grill off of this to expose these 4 microphone capsules, and they're all pointed off in different directions. And then we use some clever math to decode this 4 microphone recording into a truly immersive soundscape. So this is probably my favorite piece of gear because this is what got me into immersive audio, which is kind of a specialty of mine. And this particular mic, the Sennheiser Ambio, it's like basically unbreakable.
Wow. And
when you do this kind of work, whether it's production sound, field recording, whatever, that becomes hugely important. The microphone that I'm holding, let's see, it has gone into a waterfall. It's fallen into the Pacific Ocean. It's been completely filled with sand. It's been completely filled with ants. You name it, I've dropped it. I've dropped it on the concrete. It's been rained on. It's been snowed on. And just no matter what happens, it just keeps plugging away. So it's a great mic. Is it the best sounding mic in the world? No, it needs a lot of work in post, if I'm being honest. But I'm happy to trade that for like field reliability.
Yeah.
So
what's the price point on that?
These are about $1,500, which is actually a great deal when you consider it's 4 microphones built into one.
Yeah.
Sennheiser microphones can be like $1,400 each. So if I had to guess, they're probably selling this at a loss. But yeah, so yes, it is pricey, but it is one of the best ways to get into immersive audio. Now, there are immersive microphones that cost $30,000. So on that scale, this is pretty darn affordable.
Right. So we were talking about when you're out in the field, and weight and everything is really a consideration. This is 4-channel. Is this all you need for ambisonic?
Yeah, for this microphone, it's called first order ambisonic. You only need 4 channels. So this is my combo, is the Sennheiser Ambio and the MixPre 6. The 4-channel mic, 4-channel recorder, and that gets you a lot. Now, ambisonic microphones, they go up in orders, and they go up to 7th order, which is 64 microphones.
64.
So there's a ball like the size of a softball that has 64 microphones embedded in it.
Wow.
And the only way to get audio, it's got a Dante converter chip inside the mic, and you come out with an Ethernet over Dante into the computer that way. So it's really not even a field mic. It's really only for like studio work, or someplace like the Sphere in Vegas. I know they use those mics. But yeah, so probably not for the field. I do have an 8-channel microphone called a second order ambisonic. Of course, when I use that one, I've got to bring the big heavy recorder.
Right.
But some clients do ask for that.
Well, what do we have over here?
So actually, the second order mic is inside this wind protection. I'm not going to pull it out because it's kind of a hassle. Yeah, this is just, I've really brought this to show an example of the wind protection, the next level up. So here, Andy talked about the softy, which kind of goes right on the end of the mic. The next level up from that is something that can go all the way around the mic. Like, you can't see this microphone at all because it's inside the wind protection, totally enclosed. I guess this would be a wind basket. You'll hear people call it a blimp or a Zephyr or Zeppelin, something like that. That's kind of the slang. But technically, I think the manufacturer Raut calls this a windshield.
Right.
Yeah, so it has like fabric on the inside, plastic skeleton on the outside, and this does a slightly better job of blocking out the wind than something like a softy.
Right.
The next level of wind protection, kind of the more elite level, would be the addition of the fur, which is called a wind jammer. This is a company called Sinella, and they call it a wind jammer, is the fur. But what do most people call these? I'm not saying it.
Dead cat?
A dead cat. So a lot of people on film sets will refer to one of these as a dead cat. So what this does is the wind hits this synthetic, it's not real fur, synthetic fur, and it breaks it up even more before it hits in there. So this particular windshield is the one that I took to Iceland. It's very expensive. It costs more than the microphone does by a good bit. And it's a guy in France makes them to order on a 3D printer.
Do you have the brush?
Yeah, I haven't brushed it in a minute, as you can
out?
see, but yeah, it's probably time for a brushing.
Can you take that off so we can see?
Yeah. So if I take the fur off, we can kind of see what's underneath. It's tight by design. Okay, there we go.
Oh, look at that. That's very sci-fi looking.
Yeah, it looks like a UFO. Yeah, but it's really cool the way this works. This is all fabric and very little skeleton. But if we pop the fabric off, now you can see the microphone inside of there. And it's got a shock mount, and it's got like a specialty cable, because this microphone has a really weird cable connector. So it has a con box to connect to that. But yeah, so this rig I got for Iceland, and I've been using it ever since. But this held up to hurricane force sustained winds in Iceland without wind noise directly on the mic, which is pretty remarkable.
When I listened to that trailer the other night, I was amazed at, I mean, you could hear the wind, you could hear, the crime scene tape, one in the park, the playground flags, and all the wind. It was just, you really heard it, and it wasn't all distorted and yeah,
you hear what the wind is interacting with in the environment, but you don't hear the wind itself, and that's really, really important. And some of those, I mean, the clip with the flapping flags, I mean, 70 miles an hour at least.
Wow.
If not more. Yeah, I mean, knock you over kind of wind. So really impressive that this was able to hold up to it.
Now, with all of the layers of wind protection, do we lose anything from the high-end frequency response?
Like when the fabric layer is on, the sleek fabric, not really. It's pretty much transparent. When you put the fur on, now there's some high-end attenuation. We're going to lose some high frequencies. So I will oftentimes just fix that in post. because I not only do I record these sounds, but I edit them and master them. So during the mastering process, I'll re-bump the highs back up a little bit to add a little bit of that back on. So
Looks
this,
like a football.
the giant football that Andy's got here, this is the rain protection for that wind setup. So it Velcros open, and you can stick that whole array inside of here. Now, it's important to note that the rain protection doesn't necessarily keep the microphone dry. It's for sound reasons. This is a special type of foam that when a raindrop hits it, it disperses it so that the drop doesn't make a thump sound. It just disperses it. The water's still going to trickle through and get your mic wet, so you have to figure out something else for that. But this will keep you, if you just put it in normal wind protection and let the rain hit on it, you would hear thump, 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 like low frequency thumps every time a raindrop hit. It ruins the recording. So this is just meant to prevent that. So again, fortunately, the microphone I like to use is pretty resistant to water. Yeah, so this is not necessary, but if you're going to get into recording more extreme weather, now you need something like this to save the recording.
You want to show your boxes over there? And that'll lead us into some other logistical things we talked about.
Step off camera here.
Lot of traveling, and when we travel, we have to have really good protection for our gear if it goes on airplanes or whatever. So those are Pelican cases that are sized as he can take those on the plane with them.
Is this the 1610? If you're interested in buying a Pelican case,
1510.
1510. Oh yeah, 1510 right there. Yeah, so these are the largest Pelican case that you can carry onto a plane. So of course you can check larger ones, but if you want to carry your gear with you, this is the biggest one they'll permit. But you can fit a good bit in here. On anything but the largest expeditions, it's usually these two cases have the entire build out for everything. So like basically everything on this table, everything here, and then some can all compact down into these cases. Now, the thing about a Pelican case though is you can't hike with it. So I bring a big like hiking backpack, like 40-liter backpack. Then I basically empty these cases into that and carry everything in with that. But for flying or traveling, this is definitely the way to go.
Cool. All right, well, I think it's probably time that we open this up for a little Q&A. So, Mike, do we have any questions from our audience, our studio audience?
We have several questions.
Studio audience, but online?
Yes. What has been the most challenging project you've worked on?
I would probably say the expedition to Indonesia was the toughest because had to try to go the extra mile for the client, knowing that I probably wasn't going to get anything good. The entire rest of the crew, their call time was like 8 a.m. My call time was like 3 a.m. To try to get out and get one of the drivers and drive me way out as far as he possibly could to get out and then keep rolling all the way until like 11 o'clock at night, just trying to get something with that much noise pollution. And that's the only reason we got anything at all, was just doing extreme, like 20-hour days in the field. Indonesia has a lot of dangerous animals, very venomous snakes, some of the most dangerous snakes in the world. So it's definitely scary. And then they don't really teach you this in school. When you go into the rainforest, everything there is trying to kill you. The plants, the trees, the vines, everything has spines on it. Everything is poisonous. You're getting snagged all over the place. There's like tigers running around. It's just crazy. So that was probably the most challenging one. I'm trying to think of any others that were pretty. I mean, they're all challenging. Like what is challenging is when you if I'm producing a library, like the trailers that we watched, that's on me. How much material I walk away with, it's like up to me. I can say, nah, that's enough. We can stop. But sometimes working for a client, they might literally mandate, like, we need 700 hours of recording for this job.
That's a lot.
And, and of those 700, I need 200 of them to be good. So once you're done editing everything down, I need to be, and that is really, really tricky. I mean, imagine if you hired a charter boat to go fishing and you said to the charter captain, like, I have to catch, 4 of this exotic fish. And if I don't catch 4 of these, I'm not paying you. It's something that's kind of out of the charter boat captain's control, or the big game hunter or whatever. And so we're trying to record wildlife and stuff. It's kind of like that too. You really, if we lose an entire day on a gig to rain, you lose a day. Now you're just down. And then, so that happened in California. We lost 2.5 days to just nonstop rain and just sitting in an RV waiting for it to stop, so it increases the pressure. So that can be a tough aspect as well.
They all have their challenges.
Yeah.
What else do we have?
We have a question about what kind of audio is recommended when recording car content for the
Automobile industry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Cool.
Doing a workup?
Yeah. Yeah. So car recording, we could teach an entire class on car recording. So let's just start by saying that.
Where does the most identifiable sound of a vehicle come from? Let's start there.
Oh, I mean, I guess
Like tailpipes, right?
yeah. So,
But then, we got to put mics. I've done a number of car workups, and you have microphones in the cabin. You have them in the engine compartment. You have them on the tailpipes. And that's just if you are driving. If you're doing a workup, you have a scene where a car is driving, you try to find the same car, like we would in Foley, same shoes and all that, but the same car and a similar place where you can open it up like they're driving it in the scene, so it sounds the same. But yeah, you're having microphones all over the car.
yeah, and so those are mono microphones
Right.
on the car. The other thing to be aware of is you need mics that are not overly sensitive, or that can take high SPLs. Right. So if you put something near the tailpipe of an exotic car, it's going to be so loud. Most mics are going to just get completely annihilated by it.
But then if your scene is like Formula One, where you're going to have other cars, passing and, like a Formula One race, you're going to have microphones along the side of the cars to get, pass-bys and stuff.
And
so
those are going to be stereo, probably something like this, the stereo pair back here, you're going to put by the side of the track to get the buys. So that's a whole perspective is huge. When you're cutting the scene together, sometimes you're on board the car, sometimes you're off board. So on board is probably going to be mostly mono mics placed at strategic locations, and off board is going to probably be stereo to get the dynamic pass-by stuff.
On-board is rugged to get. I did a project years and years and years ago of an F1, Formula One amusement park ride. And I needed that obligatory sound inside where you heard all the shifting and the downshifting and the RPMs change and all that. And I won't tell how I got the sound, but then you load it in, you'd use pitch bend, and there's a lot of stuff you have to do to even after you record to get it to sound right.
If you are into car recording, the company you want to check out is called Pole Position. They're the company that is best known for car recording. I'm sure they have a bunch of videos out and stuff like that, just kind of showing their process.
Yeah. What about students who are wanting to do B-roll? Like, our students get a basic package with the shotgun mic. What would you recommend for them going out to do, like, B-roll? And also, if they're doing interviews, of course, we're always trained to get that sound at the end of the interview. Is there any other tricks that they should be thinking about when they're getting that sound at the end that they can mix through under?
I mean, if you have the opportunity to step away from the set maybe go somewhere a little quieter or where people aren't going to interfere. Let's see. I mean, the great thing about B-roll, I guess it's like, you kind of expect to, since you have an image now, sometimes stuff that would be out of place in a normal recording isn't.
Right.
So if you can see in the background a highway with cars whizzing by, even if it's really far away, now that sound is justified.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
So that might be one strategy, is kind of rethink where you're pointing the camera to justify some of the sounds that you're hearing, if you can get away with it without it ruining the shot.
Right. Or layer it up.
Yeah, you can always add
use
something.
the nat sound on the camera and then just layer it up with more backgrounds.
Yeah, a lot of times in audio mixing, to hide issues, we just add more issues to mask it. Like cicadas are a problem, throw more cicadas. At least it'll smooth it out. Sometimes smooth is better than clean.
And we have one last question.
Our final question.
How does planning and preparation prepare a role in your work, specifically for the success of your client-placed productions? And that would fall with what we were talking about earlier with the paperwork and traveling internationally.
Right. Yeah, and so this was one of Andy's questions that we didn't get to, so that's a really good question.
Okay, there are actually two things going on here. There's the logistical preparation, and then there's just the recording preparation, of gear and all that kind of stuff. But take it away.
Yeah, so the first bit of preparation is probably location scouting. And, for me, Google Maps is just the best tool there is for this. If you're looking around on Google Maps, first of all, if you're seeing a lot of green, if you're looking at the satellite view and it's mostly green, you're probably in pretty decent shape. So that's a start, is like, whatever place I'm going, I'll start to where are the isolated areas on the map that are, national parks, state parks, stuff that's away from people. Then there's a handy feature called measure distance. You can just right-click anything on Google Maps and then right-click anywhere else and measure distance. So if I have a recording destination in mind, I might measure distance from where I'm thinking of hiking to what is the closest road of any size, or maybe the closest 2-lane highway. And if it's less than 2 miles, it's probably not going to work, depending on how busy that road is. Another thing, sometimes especially with wildlife recording, you don't want water, like running water, like streams, waterfalls, stuff, because it just translates as noise. Now, there's a weird thing is most hiking trails tend to follow water. So if you're on a actual designated hiking trail, a lot of times you're within earshot of water. So that'll be another thing, is I'll look at the trail and measure, okay, at what point on this trail does it bend the furthest away from the water? And that might be an ideal recording destination. Another big thing is to have a flight tracker app on your phone. I think mine's called Flight Aware, something like that. It's a free app, but you can pull it up, zoom in on a spot in the planet, and it'll show you every plane that's currently flying over that location, where they're going to, where they're coming from. And if I see that, because planes travel in lanes, sort of like cars do, and if the location I'm looking at is consistently got planes stacked up on it, that's probably a no-go. So that's another good piece of scouting information to have. And local customs and habits. I'm probably going to go record Japan in the next year or so, and the customs in Japan are very different from here. It might be perceived as disrespectful to set up a microphone in certain locations, like around a temple or, where people's homes and stuff like that. So, in that case, you either will do as much research as you can, or if it's someplace that's very different from what we're accustomed to, maybe hire a local guide would be the best way, because they can speak the language and get you out of any trouble that you might get into. So that to me is kind of like the scouting. Then once you have chosen your locations, now we get into the more logistical aspects of do you need a permit? If you're in a national park, a state park, public property, private property. These are all different permitting bodies, different permissions that you might need to get. I think the U.S. National Parks recently had a policy change where small impact productions, so in field recording definitely fits under that, does not need a permit anymore. You might need to ask permission from a ranger, am I permitted to record here, but they don't require a formal permit. But like other jurisdictions definitely do require permits. And to get a permit, you have to have production insurance. So even though my company, all we do is field recording, we still carry production insurance just like a film production company would, because that's the only way we can qualify to get permits. For just off the top of my head, we have $1 million liability policy. It's like $500 a year. So it's really not that bad because the permit opens doors that would be closed firmly otherwise. The number of wacky places I've recorded because I was able to show a COI and a permit it's crazy. I'm not going to get people in trouble, but you can get into some really crazy places if you got the right paperwork. So equipment insurance, that's another big thing. Make sure that your equipment is covered internationally if you're doing this kind of work.
And if you're around water.
The marine indemnity.
Rider.
Yeah. So that's really important to protect your gear. Like, if I didn't have all this stuff insured and I brought it out in the rainforest, I'd be terrified of it all breaking. Yeah. But when it's insured, I'm like, I still bring 2 of everything to cover my bases so the gig isn't ruined. But if an individual piece of gear was to get annihilated, then so be it. And then kind of the last logistical hurdle for international work, if you're going to be working for profit, your equipment needs to be covered by something called a carnet, which you can think of like the passport that you have to have. A carnet is the passport for your equipment. So it's an itemized list of every single piece of gear in the kit, and you have to bring it to U.S. Customs before you leave the country, and they open it and inspect it and go all through it, and they're going to match up serial numbers and stuff. And then when you get to the foreign country, they're going to open it up and inspect it and go through it. But they're making sure that you're not trying to get around tariff laws. Like, they don't want you to like buy a piece of equipment for really cheap in another country and then bring it back to the U.S. without paying the taxes and tariffs on it and stuff like that. So they're very, very strict about making sure that the list is exactly the same when it leaves the country as when it entered the country. And depending where in the world you are, that can be very, very serious. That was another thing about Indonesia. I mean, we sat at customs for like 8 or 9 hours because it wasn't just me. It was all these other disciplines. And we had like 60 Pelican cases at each with their own carnet. And they went through it with a fine tooth comb. And, I firmly believe that if the paperwork didn't match up, they might have confiscated stuff. They might not have let us into the country. So it's, in some place like that, it can be very serious. Other places, like in Iceland specifically, I presented the case to the guy at the carnet thing, and he just waved it off and gave me the stamp and sent me on my way. I was at customs in Iceland for like 3 seconds. So very, very different countries. But you want to make sure you're covered no matter what. So logistics is a huge part of it. And, a lot of times on these jobs, I kind of see myself as almost the producer in some ways, because you have to do all of that stuff that, normally if you're like a sound mixer on a set, none of that really interferes with your workday at all. But for something like this, yeah, it does.
Amazing. All right.
Andy.
Yes.
Let's say congratulations, Mike.
Yeah. So,
okay,
we hope
he's on us right now, so we get to say hi.
Oh,
we get to say hi from Jessica Colbine.
Celebrate with Mike. It's your 25 years working at Full Sail.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
You're getting lots of applause.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Getting hearts.
Yes, getting hearts and everything.
Awesome.
So I just have to play TD and basically say it's time for the outro, sir.
The outro. Okay. Well, thank you guys for coming to our buzz our Live from the Hive. It was a pleasure. I do want to say, if you want to check out any previous episodes, either of the audio series or the DIY lighting or the Halloween set safety or any other DCBS or DC buzzes that we've done, go to wearedcbs.com and click on DC Buzz, and they'll all pop up. So do you want to say any parting words, Jason?
Yeah, just go out and listen to the world. It costs $0.
Yep.
It's a great exercise. Even if you don't want to work in post-production, I think it's still great way to kind of experience the world.
Yeah, get outside and play, and learn to listen. All right, well, that is it. And thank you guys, and have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night.